podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan, and in this podcast we chat to some of the stars of the sport of Speedway from both sides of that air fence. This time it's very much someone who's made their name on the track. We're connecting up live to Australia, to Mildura, to speak to Justin Sedgmen, who in his British Speedway career has ridden for sides including the Somerset Rebels, the Swindon Robins, the Birmingham Brummies, as he will be this year, along with the Leicester Lions. He's also had time with the Bellevue Aces, the Ipswich Witches, the Sheffield Tigers, the Glasgow Tigers, Lakeside Hammers, Redcar Bears, and the Edinburgh Monarchs, where he won back-to-back league titles in 2014 and 2015. Speedway in the Sedgmen family goes back a few generations. In fact, it was his granddad who first spotted the talent of a certain Fulcrum.
My granddad actually won Australian title, long track title on it, and like a couple of grass track titles on this bike, and we've still got it, and that's the one that Phil Crump first rode.
We'll also hear about his dream Speedway meeting and who would make his all-time 1-7 and much more besides. And it gives me a very great pleasure to welcome to Humans of Speedway, Justin Sedgmen. Hey, Sedgy.
Hello, mate. How are we?
Yeah, we're not bad, thanks. Good to connect with the other side of the world, with Australia, and that's where you are at this moment. You've been there all winter since the end of the last season, but you've been busy down under. You've had quite a bit of Speedway, perhaps more Speedway than you thought that you were probably going to be riding in with the Australian Championships, and still some meetings to come for you as well at Mildura, which is very much your home circuit, and you had success in that Rob Woofenden meeting as well a couple of weeks or so back at the time of recording this. So it's been a pretty good winter for you all overall. Yeah,
for sure. Actually, I ended up I missed the last meeting for Sheffield because I'd already pre-booked the meeting at Mildura, which was the Victorian state title. And I ended up coming second in that, actually. I landed the day before and did the Vic title, and Jamin ended up winning that. But then unfortunately for me and a lot of other people like Adam Ellis and a few others, that the Mildura actual Speedway, it got flooded out. So, yeah, it was more about panic stations of trying to save whatever we could, really. The track was never going to get flooded, but obviously the infrastructure around it was going to be affected pretty well.
People might have seen the photos of this. It was an incredible sight that you had this Speedway track that was looking great, perfect, rideable. Then the surrounding area just all covered in water. And is this something that regularly happens at Mildura? I've not seen of it before. What was the situation there that led to this being such an event?
Yeah, I think if the track went under, we'd be in big trouble. I think even you guys would be in trouble. So, yeah, the track's probably, the water level was probably 2 meters below that. But then obviously the pits is below that. And so probably 1.5 meters, I'll say, what would that be? 4.5 foot underwater.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was obviously a lot of water. And when you come into the track, you go down like from Mildura, and then you're going to go past the gun club, and then you drop down this dip, and then you go up the hill into the stadium. So when you went down the hill, all of that was just underwater. Literally, it was just like flat. It was unreal, actually. I couldn't believe it. And the last time that kind of happened was the last time it did happen was 1956.
Wow, and they're only just reorganising those meetings now, aren't they? One of them is coming up this coming weekend, which you're going to be riding in. We'll probably talk more about that soon. You had some visitors over from the UK in the winter as well. Adam Ellis, your former Sheffield teammate, came over to ride some meetings, and he rode in the Oceania Championships, and he's the Oceania champion, so that all worked out pretty well.
Yeah, well, I actually was happy for him that he did win that meeting, because he was meant to do probably 3 meetings at Mildura, and he didn't get to ride there. And his girlfriend ended up coming out. It probably ended up being better for her, because then he went travelling. One of the sponsors from the club, STE Engineering, gave him a car, and they kind of just took off and went travelling and did like the proper backpacking thing, and which was really cool. And then obviously when they did all that and the Oceania meeting was still on, he actually did a meeting in Brisbane as well for Darcy Ward, which he did pretty good in. And then he come back and he jumped on one of my bikes and he went to the Oceania and no one could kind of catch him. So he ended up winning it, and it really made the trip and everything that happened worth it for him, really, because he got off the plane in Mildura and he ended up just going straight into the track really that day, and to stop the water from coming in. He was on the tractor pushing up dirt and filling up sandbags so the water wouldn't wreck the club rooms and the machinery shed.
Wow. So a little bit of local hero action as well for him there to stop that. And he then went...
He made the front page.
Did he? Wow.
He made the front page for filling up a sandbag.
Not really the headline he was probably intending on making when he headed over to Australia for a winter of Speedway, but that's how it was. And then he went and won that individual thing in America as well, so he's had a good winter too.
Yeah, he's had fun by the looks of it.
and you won the Woofy meeting a few weeks back. That was over towards Perth, wasn't it, at Pinger Park? So again, a strong lineup there, and not least with Woofy himself. And so you were saying that it's rare that fans in that part of Australia have got to see Ty Woofenden racing in Australia.
They've seen him ride in Perth, but to be fair, to flip that around, he's never rode like on the East Coast, but also when me, Jamin and Ryan Douglas and a couple of the other boys like Cooper Reardon and Dale Wood, we went to Perth, and to be fair, all them people there didn't really know us because it's so far away. It's literally like riding in another country. And I actually got there and I just went, I don't really know anyone. And then Dave Cheshire come over to me, and I know Dave Cheshire, then Lee Redman, and there's a couple other people that have been over here, and yeah, it was quite surreal. And once we got that kind of few minutes out of the way, we unloaded the bikes and went straight into the meeting.
And away you went. And that's the one where they have a 6-rider final?
They did. That's kind of I think, to be honest, that's a bit of a craze that Mildura started. They did it a few years ago. They have the Phil Crump Classic, which is like just because Phil Crump's done a lot of things for Mildura Speedway. He was like the first one to go overseas from Mildura and kind of set the way, really. So they have a meeting to kind of just say thank you and just remember what he did. But his thing was he kind of used to win the Ipswich 16-lapper all the time. And he was like the Iron Man of Speedway. And so he always used to race at Mildura back in the day, and it used to be a 6-rider race doing 6 laps. That was like the big craze they did back in the 70s or whatever. So every year we have one race, which is you get to the final, the 6 in the final, and then you've got to do 6 laps. And I don't think they realise how much more power the bikes and how unpredictable they are to ride these days, because that last lap's an absolute killer. To stay on topic, actually, when we went to Perth, they had a 6-rider final, but it was only 4 laps.
That's probably for the best, because otherwise you'll be pulling your arms out of the sockets. Let's look ahead to this coming year then, and off the back of your successes in winter in Australia, looking ahead to 2023 in Great Britain, you're going to be riding for 2 clubs. You're going to be riding in the Premiership for the newly promoted to the Premiership League, the Leicester Lions, and you're going to be racing too for the Birmingham Brummies once again, as you did in 2022. Starting with Leicester, though, it's a big lineup there that they've got, a solid-looking team, and doing a lot of work to the track as well. I don't know if you've seen the pictures online, but they've been working very hard on that, improving the drainage and getting things nice and perfect for the start of the season.
You know, I like the fact that they're doing a lot of work, but in the other hand, I did notice like the riders like Nick and Richie and Kyle Howarth really got Leicester dialed in last year, and they were kind of pretty much unbeatable around there. But I think I do think if they make that racetrack a little bit smoother and a little bit more user friendly, you'll probably get some better racing, which would be good.
And the team that they've assembled, obviously it's the first season back at the top level for Leicester for quite some time. They had a tough time the first time there, but now seem to have a solid lineup with yourself, Max Frick, of course you'll know well, Chris Harris, you know, some big names, some solid riders among the lineup there. Yeah,
I think it looks pretty steady. You know, that's definitely a team that, you know, can make the playoffs. And if everyone kind of rides to their capability and a little bit better, you know, it's definitely doable. But, you know, you can have these conversations all the time at the start of the year and people say this and this and this and then whatever. It's just, you see what happens at the end of the year, really. I think the team that's kind of just keeps putting points on the board and scoring away from home as well, and then kind of hits form at the right time, is always going to win, because it's not points based. It's you go into the playoffs and then you go into a final.
Yeah, and how many times have we seen the team that finishes top not making it very far in the playoffs as well? It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. Let's talk about Birmingham as well. You're back with the Brummies. I remember you commentating alongside me on BSN, and you were saying, you know, how fantastic you'd found working with the Birmingham promotion. So no surprise to see you back there for another year, and a slightly different looking team this year as well. That Nigel Tully and Lawrence Rogers have put their own stamp on it a bit more.
Yeah, well, I would have been stupid, really, if I didn't go back to Birmingham, because I seemed to have a good time there. And that was one of the things that attracted me to go back to Birmingham, was I wanted to ride for a club that I'd already ridden for. And 2010 was actually a good year for me when I last rode there. And then obviously coming in a few weeks in, hit the ground running, and I wasn't out and out to kind of say heat leader number one. But I felt like the attention was around me, which it didn't bother me at the time. But it kind of felt good that people wanted me to be there, and they liked watching me ride. And I went into some pretty big races at Birmingham and beat some good races, beat some good riders. So, you know, I kind of did it. I kind of like made the step into being that guy that wins races for your team.
I think you said to me when we were doing BSN one time that you were confident in that you had beaten pretty much everybody in the league at some point over the course of the season, or at some point in your career. So you know that you've there's nobody there that really phases you, if that makes sense.
I felt like I never had like the accolade I deserved, I guess. Right in Edinburgh, when we won 2 league titles in a row, I felt like I was kind of in the shadows of like Cookie and Sam. Not that that's a bad thing; those two rode really good, but I didn't really I was kind of overlooked, I guess. And then I went to Swindon, and I did pretty good. That was the year where you had to race like the 1, 3, and 5 all the time. And a lot of the meetings I ended up being at number 5. So yeah, it was a bit tough for a few years. And I feel like I'm probably riding the best I've ever rode now. And it's kind of feeling good. I'm not really setting any major goals or anything. I just want to keep winning races.
Yeah, just keep on keeping on. But those winter results must be, a good way to start off 2023, certainly. And we'll talk more about those sides that you mentioned there, Swindon and Edinburgh, a little later on. But right now, I want to go right back to the beginning, as we always do. I always like to ask, how do you find your way into Speedway? And for you, it's a fairly simple answer because your granddad, Phil Sedgmen, was involved in Speedway. So was your dad, again, a former rider. And so it's natural that you would be growing up around Speedway in general. But your granddad, Phil, we have him to thank for some, quite major introductions to the sport, don't we? Just tell us all about that.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, I actually went and stayed with Phil Crump the last round of the Australian title at Brisbane, and he kind of had the bikes there, which was Jason. He had two of Jason's World Championship bikes, and he had the bike, the Neil Street bike, the one I think he come third in the world final in, behind Peter Collins. And then he had Jason's junior bike there, and my granddad was actually there as well. And he was kind of just looking at the bikes, and then Phil kind of wandered down. It's a big house, like you go down the stairs, but I was upstairs and I was kind of just watching, and Phil Crump walked down, and he goes, "Oh, what are you doing, Sedge?" Which is my granddad. And he goes, "Oh, just looking at the bikes, mate." And he goes, "Well, it's your bloody fault they're all in here. You know that, right?" And I thought that was pretty cool because my granddad knew Phil Crump's parents. And then he asked Phil, because he was riding a motocross bike, "Do you want to come over ride the Speedway bike?" So that's kind of how the Crump family got into it, I guess.
Wow. And so from that introduction, of course, a separate family dynasty of Speedway was born with the Crumps, and we know the story there. But so your granddad introduced Phil Crump to Speedway from motocross. That's not a bad introduction, really. Yeah,
we still got the bike in the shed. My granddad actually won Australian title, long track title on it, and like a couple of grass track titles on this bike, and we've still got it. And that's the one that Phil Crump first rode. Wow, that's a proper bit of Speedway history you got there. Yeah, definitely. And I think actually Jason's wanted it at some stage, but it hasn't ventured. I'll be getting it next, I think. Phil Crump's first bike, family heirloom? Yeah, actually, it's quite funny because my grandma, she passed away in 2020 during COVID, but she bought the bike and she absolutely hated Speedway. But you've got it now, and there it is for posterity and being handed through the generations. What about your journey yourself to being a Speedway rider then? Because not always, sometimes it works the other way, that the parents say, "Don't get involved in Speedway, son." But for you, you worked your way up through the ranks. What's the journey for an Australian Speedway rider coming through, and had you done anything else? I know that your brother rode as well, didn't he? But were you pure Speedway, or were you involved in motocross or anything like that? I'm all Speedway, mate. Basically, because I'm the younger, I'm the younger brother of the family. So Ryan, He's older than me. He was 2 years older than me. We both rode juniors. He actually did quite well in juniors. He won an Australian title. And then making the step up, he had a couple of crashes and he ended up breaking his pelvis. And so that kind of knocked the wind out of him. And he tried to ride, but he didn't really want to get hurt anymore, basically. So, yeah, basically growing up, my family could kind of only afford to really do Speedway. So we both had one bike each. And if my bike broke down, my brother, I would ride my brother's bike. And if his broke down, he'd ride my bike. So that's kind of how it worked. A lot of other guys have done motocross and Speedway at the same time, or dirt track in Australia. And basically we couldn't afford to do that really, because there wasn't just one kid doing it, there was two. Mum was a school teacher and Dad was a salesman for the boxes that the actual grapes get put in. The polystyrene boxes. So he had a lot of customers that dealed, basically all the Italians in Mildura bought their boxes off my dad so that they could put their grapes into export.
Wow, so a busy family life then, but you need the support of your parents, as every young Speedway rider does, to sort of make the dream happen. And it's a long way from Mildura to the UK or to Europe, and so many riders make that journey over. Tell us about your first trips over to the UK then, and moving over here to pursue your Speedway dream.
Yeah, well, I was quite close with Lee Adams when I was kind of going through and stepping onto the senior bike, and he got me signed by Swindon when I was 16. So then I become an asset of Swindon. Basically, my first year, I went over and I stayed kind of around the corner from Steve Johnson, Corey Gavacol, and my brother actually come over with me that year as well, and he did a bit of National League, and then he kind of jumped in the van to drive me around because I couldn't drive at the time. So yeah, he did that. He kind of helped me where he could, and yeah, Lee was kind of down the road, and Steve Johnson was there. Travis McGowan, he had a workshop that was next to mine. And Corey Gavacol's workshop was next to mine as well. So there was like 3 or 4 of us there. And then that was in Swindon. So that was actually a really cool time. So I was going down the road to Somerset to ride. And then I actually did one meeting for Swindon that year, which was pretty cool.
And when you think of Somerset or indeed Swindon as well, they've both had good relations with Australian riders over the years. How important for you was it to have fellow Aussies around you, both in the team and during the week as well when you're doing your preparations and just living life?
Yeah, it definitely helped. That was for sure, because Steve Johnson lived around the corner, but he was also the captain of Somerset. And then the following year I went to Birmingham, and Steve Johnson was there and Jason Lyons was there, and he's from Mildura. Steve Johnson was obviously from Perth. And basically I couldn't do anything wrong because I'd get a whack around the ear or something, because they were kind of the big brothers, I guess, even though they're like 20 years older than me. But yeah, I could never throw my helmet or anything like that. Otherwise I'd get probably a kick up the bum.
I mean, a couple of good experienced hands to keep you right, though. Obviously people from Australia understand where you've come from and so on, but they had a lot of experience in not just British Speedway, but European Speedway by then. So good to keep you straight.
Yeah. Well, it was really cool riding with Linesy, actually. Jono's a legend, but when I was a kid, I always used to watch Jason Lyons. He'd come back and ride at Mildura, and he'd do every meeting pretty much. So as a kid, I obviously seen him a lot ride. And then his dad, Rodney Lyons, who rode Speedway, he was pretty handy back in the day. He used to ride with my granddad. But my granddad was Rodney Lyons' best man at his wedding.
It's a small old world, Speedway, as we're finding, and we can tell you're obviously very well connected into the Australian scene, of course. Coming over to Britain, though, there's a big difference in tracks. So we'll talk about Edinburgh soon, but you've also ridden at Plymouth, which is currently the smallest track in British Speedway, and some quite big ones as well. Swindon was a fair decent size. Sheffield. How do they compare to the tracks that you would race back at home? What are the tracks in Australia like? Are they all around sort of similar size, 300 metres, like American tracks, notoriously small, more akin to the size of, say, Plymouth? But what are you used to in Australia?
Well, actually, the meeting in Perth, that track over there used to be 163 metres. Okay. And then they kind of thought, well, this isn't the way forward. Actually, Rob Woofenden put that track in for Ty. He kind of got that all up and running. And basically he wanted a track where he could ride the junior Speedway bike and the senior Speedway bike on the same track. So that's what they come up with, and it obviously served its purpose pretty well, because Ty ended up winning 3 world titles. But they've built a really cool track there now, which is like 350 metres, all air fence and all brand new. And to be honest, if they keep going the way they're going, there's probably no reason, a track like Mildura or Perth or Gilman couldn't host the Speedway Grand Prix.
Yeah, I mean, that's another conversation entirely, isn't it? But the fact that there hasn't been a Grand Prix in Australia for so long, and that there's sort of always a promise that it's going to happen next year, and still it doesn't seem to be on the cards just yet. But when you look at certainly as you say, the Pinjar Park, it looks pretty solid. It looks like a great venue.
Oh, it was really good. Actually, I think once they do concrete the pits and, just do a little odds and jobs, I guess, just make it a little bit better. It's nearly there. It's going to be fabulous. And I actually spoke to Tybad. I said, next time you have this meeting, I said, have one on Saturday and then have one the following Saturday, and I'm staying here for a week because Perth's a lovely place to go and visit. I didn't realise it was that good.
Justin Sedgmen, our guest on Humans of Speedway, and in the next part, looking back on some of the highlights of Sedgy's career, including winning treble trophies with the Edinburgh Monarchs in 2014, but why he feels his contribution has somewhat been forgotten. Find about that next on Humans of Speedway. You're listening to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan, and my guest in this episode is Justin Sedgmen, who's going to be lining up for the Leicester Lions in British Speedway's Premiership and the Birmingham Brummies in the Championship in 2023. But he's ridden for so many clubs across the course of his career, not least the Edinburgh Monarchs, where he was part of the team that won back-to-back titles in 2014 and 2015. But in 2014, they also won the Knockout Cup and the League Cup as well. It was a tremendous year for the Monarchs in that year, one that has obviously gone down in history. But you were saying earlier that perhaps you feel like you are the forgotten man of that treble winning team in 2014 a bit.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was they wanted me to be number 2. And basically me and Cookie were like a 1 and 5, really. There wasn't too many races at Edinburgh, especially around Armidale, that we didn't 5-1. And I think we're the most successful pairing ever. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm not entirely I've been told that it's the best pairing, or the best 1 and 2. But then you could probably say that Cookie and Sam Masters were probably the best 1 and 5. So yeah, it was one of them things. The team was just that good. And no one's seen it coming, and that's why it was so good, because they put this team together that they thought would do all right, and then end up being probably the best team ever.
As you say, though, that if you're good on the road, that's the magic sauce, isn't it? Because so many clubs have home advantage, and I think nowhere is that more than perhaps Edinburgh, because Armidale is such a tricky track for many riders. But obviously, if you've got that home advantage and you get it nailed, you know that you're pretty much unbeatable at home. And if you can do the job on the road as well, then you're there, aren't you?
Yeah, like that 2014 season, I think we went 26 or 24 meetings unbeaten from the start of the season.
Yeah, that's as the record goes, that's pretty solid. And then back-to-back league titles as well, 2014 and 15.
Yeah. So we won the league again in 2015, and then I think Somerset won the Knockout Cup that year. Yeah, they beat us in that, but I think we won the League Cup. So we won the League Cup and then the actual league, whatever you call it as such.
You're one of the few riders, I guess, and there's been quite a few, but you are one of the few riders who's ridden for both Edinburgh and Glasgow. Obviously, of course, there's a huge rivalry between the two, you being part of that successful period with Edinburgh about 10 years ago, and then racing now in 2021, it was after COVID, for Glasgow. What's it like riding for Glasgow as a rider now, because you see the huge amount of investment that's gone into the Glasgow Tigers, and it always feels that there's a sort of a sense of unfulfilled expectation among that. Do you feel the pressure of the desire for success upon your shoulders, shall we say?
I didn't actually mind riding for Glasgow. I think, I don't want to say anything bad about them because they are genuinely nice people, but they haven't won.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. And, I would like to see them win because Peter is a really, really nice guy, and so is Jerry. Cammy bleeds Glasgow Speedway. But unfortunately, when you do put the Glasgow race jacket on, I didn't really feel the pressure as much. But I find that some riders put the jacket on and they kind of might get paid a little bit more and feel like they don't need to ride as good. They kind of feel like they made it, I guess. I don't know. It's a funny one. And they Cookie was so good there for so long. He had the highest average, but there was no one really there to help him. And when he was struggling a bit, there was still no one there to help him. But probably 2019 was their year to win, and they didn't. So, that's the way it goes sometimes.
You did, however, win some silverware last year with the Sheffield Tigers. We'll talk more about that in a moment because you got to obviously the grand final in 2022 in the Premiership, but also won that League Cup as well. Sheffield is a big fast track, obviously quite different to the likes of Edinburgh or Plymouth where you've ridden before. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, it's it's full throttle all the way at Sheffield. And do you find there is home advantage in that because it's such a fast track?
Yeah, Sheffield's a funny one because there is no home track advantage really. It's kind of who just gets out and gets on the dirt line and kind of rides the widest, I guess. Shoots Jack Holder down to the ground because he's fast, that kid. And, guys like Howarth and Adam, they've done a couple of years there now, so they kind of had it dialed in. And I felt like I just struggled a bit with it. Towards the end of the year, I felt fine. But that was another thing that kind of bugged me about that was we had really inconsistent home fixtures. So we'd do a match there and then probably wouldn't be there for 3 weeks again. And that was a bit hard. And then at the end of the year, they all come at once and it was like shit. So by the end, come to the final against Bellevue, I felt like I was riding Sheffield pretty good.
When it came down to that Premiership Grand Final, the scores were reasonably close. You must have fancied your chances having the second leg at Sheffield, thinking, all it takes is a couple of 5-1s and we can narrow the gap. It never really happened on the night, though, did it? And what was the sense in the camp sort of going into that fixture, knowing that it was still you were down, but you were still in touching distance on your home circuit?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we had a few decisions go not our way. And Jack Holder obviously had that horrible night at Bellevue, and it wasn't through lack of effort. He was just wrong spot, wrong time, and that all that thing just affected. And he had a really quick bike as well, and that thing got bent. So he had to ride the spare one, and obviously it wasn't as quick, and he hadn't rode it all year. Actually, he was always on this other thing, and he just it wasn't good enough. Wasn't through his effort. He just, the bike wasn't doing what he wanted to do. And then, Jack Holder, when he goes to Bellevue, he's good for 12, 13, 14 points. You wouldn't read that. And then, everyone else kind of did their thing. Kyle was obviously trying really, really hard. And it was he was the captain, so there was a lot of pressure on him. And, he basically tried too hard in the end because he was in some good positions and had just made a couple of little mistakes. But that was just the pressure getting to him, I guess. And he wanted to put it right at Sheffield. But we had that, I think it was 12 points we were down. And I think we got it back to 10, but we couldn't get that 13, I guess. But, there was some really bad decisions that, with Adam getting disqualified and then kind of Toby getting disqualified, Jack getting disqualified at Bellevue. They're good riders, them guys. And if they'd won that race, there's your 9 points type thing, and that's a bigger swing.
And it was only a few weeks earlier that you'd met Bellevue in the league at Oleton and beat them quite comprehensively. It was, 57-33? Or so you must have been confident that you had it in the tank to pull that deficit back.
Basically, we thought we were going to do it again, but they had Robert Lambert this time. So, yeah, that made things a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, about that, I mean, the jury's out about, I don't think it'll happen again this year, put it that way. But that, what were the thoughts? What were the thoughts about that? Because it was quite. I mean, they'll say he's a Grand Prix rider. Max Strick's a Grand Prix rider. Robert Lambert's a Grand Prix rider. But you'd argue that Robert probably did slightly better than Max would have done based on his recent performances, shall we say?
The only reason I laugh about it is it's quite funny because, he's a British kid. He's allowed to work in the UK. He's taken an Australian spot. He's not like he's taken another British citizen's spot. And, if you went through as much stuff, and I should say as much shit as what I've had to do with work visas, that's the way it works. If you're a British person, you should be entitled to work in the UK. And the funny thing about it all is he was allowed to do it. And at the start of the year, I can remember all the fans of Bellevue. I don't really want to get slated for this, but they need to remember as well that they were calling Lemo to be sacked 1 month into the season. Like, Lemo kind of didn't help himself. He said, we've got a plan in place. They tried to get Bewley back in. They had to sign Jake Allen on a 1 month thing and whatnot. And, these fans were calling him to be sacked. Well, by the end of the year, Lemo's done everything he could possibly do to win a league title. And now he's a hero. It's funny how people work.
Yeah, 6 months in Speedway is a long time, isn't it?
It's a very long time. But I just remember, because I wasn't riding at the time. And I remember just looking at the comments. I'm like, Lemo's going to lose his job. Surely he's going to lose his job. And, by the end of the year, I actually said to Lemo, first thing I said to him, I was like, well, you did everything you could to win the league. He actually had the best of his life as a manager's point of view, and probably one of the most horrible personally, because his dad passed away just before the Speedway Nations final the night before. So, really? Yeah, it was good to see him win all them things because it had been a tough time for him.
I did not know that. I mean, that makes the achievements on a personal level, even more significant, doesn't it? But that's how 2022 ended. Sheffield, of course, will be gunning to put that right in 2023. But you'll be with Leicester, and you got the chance to stop them and see what you can do there in a new season, and for a team that's well supported in Leicester, and a new era there. Yeah,
for sure. I actually really liked the Sheffield fans, to be honest. I thought they were really supportive, and I really wanted to do good for them because they were such a cool bunch of people. And obviously I rode with him as well at Swindon, and I didn't have that much to do with the Bateses, and to be honest, I still haven't. I've always done everything through Simon, and then when I've gone to Leicester, I've done everything through Stuart. But I will say one thing, you kind of shake their hand, and a deal's a deal, and you get your money, and there's just black and white, and that's it. So it's kind of good because there's no pressure, really, I guess. They're probably ruthless, I guess, but, they're, a deal's a deal, and they call it as they say it. And I wish Sheffield well because they do deserve a league title. But, obviously I'm running for Leicester now, and 100% is going into helping them win and achieve what they want to do.
How do you find life in the UK coming over from Australia? Because, I guess every country has its quirks, but coming over from the other side of the world, what are the things that you've sort of noticed about living over here that maybe you just either can't understand or think, well, why didn't we have this in Australia? I mean, it must work both ways, but how do you find life in the UK?
I can tell you one thing. There's two things, actually. Your weather's shit, and so is your traffic.
Yeah. Fair points.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't mind it. Honestly, I've got a girlfriend who's from Scotland. I like Scotland a lot, to be honest. That's probably it's a nice part of the world. It's just too far away from anything. It's like Perth. It's just it's not logistically good for Speedway, unless if you ride for Edinburgh or Glasgow. But yeah, I do like the British Speedway. I like the way they've run it. Like it feels like there's no pressure, and it's like going back in time. They probably do need to do a few things a bit better, but in saying that, I don't see anyone else putting their hand up to try and fix it as well. We can all sit here and knock it and whinge about it and say, oh, I won't be running next year. It's all going to fold, which is what you hear every year. But these same group of people that have done it for 40 or 50 years make it happen every year. So, it is good for like clubs like Peter from Allied, that he's bought they've bought Glasgow and they're trying to do things a little bit more modern. But then I also like the old school way where you rock up an hour and a half before the meeting and you go and race, and the fans want to fill their program in and they want to watch 15 heats at £18 and go home.
And you mentioned there about the promoters. The promoters' job is so much more than promoting, and often the amount of stuff they have to do maybe outweighs the promoting aspect. That's maybe the hardest bit of promoting is finding the time to get out there and do something effectively, cost effectively as well, because people will say, well, why don't we have billboards? Why don't we have TV adverts? Why don't we have this, that, and the other? It all costs a lot of money that Speedway clubs just don't have. And, people are out there doing what they can, working as hard as they can to get the word out about the sport. And for anybody saying that the sport's dying, I can assure you there's a lot of people working very hard to promote Speedway. Yeah,
there's a few fundamentals that you need to get right. But the biggest thing as well is I find it really frustrating, and it actually does annoy me a lot. There's a lot of negative people involved in British Speedway, and they're always saying we should do this better, and that will never work, and it's all this kind of stuff, but they're not the ones that are doing it. And I don't know, that frustrates me a bit, because if basically the best way to describe it is every club needs a Lee Kilby, because that guy is full of positivity and he loves the sport and just wants to see it progress. And if every club had them, it would probably be a little bit better.
I mean, Lee Kilby worked tirelessly to try and breathe some life into Swindon, and it hasn't, up to this point, had the result they were hoping for, but the work has still very much been going on to try and do that. And that's in his own time as well, in addition to having a job, in addition to his work with BSN and so on. And then, some of the comments they got from people who were supposed Swindon fans was, horrific, really. And not it makes you wonder why you bother.
Yeah, I know. You can't read comments. You just can't read comments. Yeah, I get that. I have actually come across that a lot as well, where you bump into someone and they kind of know who you are, and they go, Speedway, yeah, I love Speedway. Like, I really enjoy watching Speedway. I'm like, oh, when's the last time you go? And he goes, oh, the 80s. I'm like, you do realise Monmore Green's like 2 miles in that direction? Oh, they still run. I just thought it all shut down when Craigley shut down, and you're just like, no, more green just there. And Birmingham Brummies is like 5 miles the other direction. You're just like, oh, man.
Yeah, and it is surprising to say, I went. The amount of people you meet who will go, I went to Speedway once. Yeah, had quite a good night. Never been since. And that's sometimes the thing, isn't it? That it's getting people to go back. And I think Peter Oakes said that you need to get people to go 4 times, 5 times, and then they will be in. But it's getting them in there that 4 or 5 times to get them into it.
Yeah, well, I'd like to know what Len Silver thinks. Because I spoke to him once and he said he's never lost money out of Speedway. He said there's been plenty of years of broke even, but I've never lost money. So he's doing something right. And to be honest, like Len's, when he promoted Rye House, it was pretty simple. It was pretty basic, but it was never like a shithole. It was well run. And he always paid his riders. I know that for a fact. He was always bang on with his money. And he's saying that he's never lost money. He's broke even plenty of times, but he's never lost money. But he's also said there's been some years where he's made lots of money. So it'd be interesting to see what he thinks should happen, because he just concentrated on his own little club, and that was what he did. He didn't really branch out and get involved in other politics sides, I don't think. Maybe he did, I don't know. I'm just thinking. But when he got older, I know he definitely just concentrated on running his little track, and that was it.
And Speedway, for a new fan coming in, it can now be fairly admin heavy. You see people with their clipboards and their pens, and people sometimes go, "Why do you need a clipboard?" I've had that said to me by younger people when I go to Speedway. Why have you got a clipboard? And they can't believe that it's not just all done for you or on an app or something like that. How does that compare with Speedway life in Australia?
I guess if you're paying 20 quid to go watch something, you want to get as much out of it as you can. And buying the £3 program as well is something to add to the evening. But that is good because people really know the rules and they know how to score it and that. But if you did that in Australia, like I was talking to Ty about it, like Saturday night, and he said Mildura, and I said, yeah, man. I said, everyone needs to read the newspaper Monday morning. And he goes, oh, what do you mean? I said, because they had to figure out who won. And he goes, yeah, they're all drunk. I said, they've all come for a night out. That's all it is.
That's cool. So they go, they drink, and then they find out who won after the event. Just enjoy the racing. Doesn't matter who's on the bikes. Yeah,
they got to read the newspaper Monday morning to figure out who they won, so who's won the meeting. So yeah, basically it's just a good night out, and it only happens a few times a year. But when you're running meetings kind of every week to every second week, I think you need to attract different things. You can't be going and writing yourself off on a Wednesday night and going to work Thursday. It just doesn't work.
Sometimes that's the thing that people will say about Speedway in the UK, because obviously most of it happens during the week because of Poland on Saturday, Poland on Sunday, and obviously international meetings on Saturdays. So that's maybe, when you look back, a lot of people will have rose-tinted glasses and go, it was better back in the day, but they're probably also racing on a Saturday and it's part of their night out.
Yeah, that is true. And I think as much as Berwick, it's just the way the shape of the track is. It isn't the most spectacular racetrack to go watch. But there seems to be something about that place where it's kind of like a night out. Mm. And, people walk into the Speedway and then they walk down to the pub after it, or they go get the chippy after it or something like that. It feels a bit more like something to go do. Not, the Speedway's on, better go watch the Berwick Bandits. It's like, the Speedway's on, there's something to do, we'll go do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think Berwick as well, being a relatively small town, everybody's quite close together, and it's a Speedway town, if you know what I mean. It's part of life there and has been for so long.
Yeah, that's what I was saying to Rory Schlein. I said, I do quite well at a sponsorship in Mildura because I'm from Mildura and I still do some meetings in Mildura, and Jamin Lindsay's the same. He's got a lot of Mildura sponsors. Mildura is only 60,000 people, but the surrounding area is called Sunraysia. It's probably 100,000. A lot of work here. There's a lot of businesses, and it's kind of a halfway point between Sydney, Adelaide, and Melbourne. So, yeah, me and Jamin probably do quite well at a sponsorship, but that's because the town isn't too big. If you said that to, so if you say to Shane Kennedy or Ryan Douglas that live in Brisbane, it's a big city, it'd be harder to attract sponsorship.
And whereas you're in a smaller place, you're a bigger deal, I suppose.
Yeah, basically, when you read the newspaper Monday morning, there's a back page article about what happened at the Speedway on Saturday night, and everyone gets the newspaper.
And I guess similar with Berwick, you look at some of the riders in Berwick, and they have got local sponsors, sponsors from that part of the world, and they say, that you're more in the spotlight, and sports in Berwick is, a big thing, and I think Rory going there, when he gets to Berwick, he is going to be on the local paper there, and so on, because it's going to be a big event like it was for Bomber when he was there last year.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how Oxford goes this year, because obviously they didn't run for a long time, and they had big crowds all the time. They had good numbers all year, I think. Yeah. From what I hear, I know the two meetings. I went there and it was pissing with rain, and there was a big crowd there.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how they keep sustaining it, and whatever they're doing, they need to share with other clubs, because you need every club like that. You need the 1,800 to 2,000 people mark.
Yeah, and they have done that, and I think they're just as well in an area that is rich in speedway. Oxford was massive when it was first there, and now as well you've got, with Swindon closing down, I think there are a few people making that journey across from Swindon just to get their speedway fix too. But yeah, you're right, they have done a tremendous job, and certainly their opening meetings were sellouts.
I've never thought about that actually, because Swindon was such a dynasty. I think you could call it that.
Yeah.
Can you call it that?
I think so. They're one of the the big legendary names of British Speedway, and as well when you consider that the London area doesn't have a club anymore. Like Lakeside isn't there, Rye House isn't there. All these clubs in the southeast, there isn't anything. So Oxford is probably the nearest. And then you've got Swindon, and between there and you've got to go down to Poole and Plymouth before you encounter anything else. So, any big speedway fan is surely going to want to go to Oxford to get their fix. Yeah,
well, the biggest thing with Swindon is they had the Jason Doyle effect too, because Doyle he must have won 2 league titles with Swindon.
Yeah, I would have thought so. He was there for a while, wasn't he? Right, he won league title 2012 with Swindon, 2017 and 2019. So 3.
Yeah, so he's won 3. Yeah, he's won 3 league titles with Swindon in the base of 6 years, I guess, 6 or 7 years. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then he's also become world champion in that time. So he was kind of a bit like the Barry Briggs before Barry Briggs. Well, no, not before Barry Briggs. He was
after Barry Briggs.
He was kind of after Barry Briggs, I guess. Like, Barry Briggs rode for Swindon and become world champion, and yeah. So he created a following after Lee Adams, I guess I should say.
It was a huge amount of momentum he had at the time, and in many ways he's still got that now, even though he's obviously knocking up the years slightly. You rode in one of the Speedway, a couple of the Speedway Grand Prix, I think, in Australia, including that one where Doyley won the world title. You were a wild card or a track reserve, and tell us about that experience. Yeah,
Fricky, I think Max Frick was replacing Hancock, and then Max had a crash before he got knocked out pretty bad, and then I took Max's slot for the Grand Prix.
And that was Melbourne, wasn't it?
Yeah. They had one in Sydney in 2002, which I won as a little kid, and then 15, 16 and 17 was at Melbourne. So when Jason won the world title was the last one they had there.
Had he won the world title by then? I can't remember. Was it confirmed by the time he got to Aussie? Yeah.
No, he had a good lead, and then he went out and won his first 3 races, and then that was it. He won.
That's a massive.
And he won the Grand
occasion.
Prix that night.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I say he won the Grand Prix and the world title on a home track, effectively.
Yeah, only Australian to be crowned. Obviously, it's a bit different because it's on the other side of the world, but he's the only Australian to be crowned world champion in Australia.
Wow, I didn't realise that. I've never thought of it that way, but when you think of it, there will not have been many, world titles that have ended in Australia. So,
yeah. So Ricardson got it in 2002. 2015 would have been Ty. 2016 was Greg, and then 2017 was Doyley. So if Ty Wolfie said he was Australian or British, it depends which passport he wanted to use, he could have been the first.
Yeah, I think, well, he's riding for the Great Britain team, at least at the moment, so he's got to use that one.
Yeah, so Doyley's the official guy official Australian that's been crowned world champion in Australia.
And back to Doyley, he really was riding a crest of the wave at that time, wasn't he, with the World Championships and winning league titles. And I think he was doing pretty well in Poland as well.
Yeah, well, Doyley rode in the crest of the wave for a couple of years, and he probably should have won the World Championship 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he didn't. But, yeah, it'd be good to see him get back to that level. He's still got hope. I think he can still do it. It's just what injuries and what he's willing to take, I guess, because, the guy is getting a little bit older. He was a late bloomer, and now people are starting to realise that he's actually, pushing 40.
And what about your experience of racing in a Grand Prix then? Because completely different level of gravy, that, isn't it? Riding in a big, massive stadium with the world's best. How was it for you? Because that track in Melbourne was really big, wasn't it? It was in a big old stadium.
Yeah, it was a big track. That stadium was big too. And probably the biggest thing they stuffed up on was the stadium was too big for the fans that they were going to get in. So the first year they got 27,000 in. The next year they had 17. Right. And then the year after, the one I rode in was 25,000, which is not bad numbers. But the stadium cost like $1 million to rent.
Right. Okay.
So, it was just, they needed 70,000 people in. But as a Speedway crowd, if you said, we got 26,000 people here, or we got 17,000 people here to come watch the Grand Prix, well, if you watch the Tyrone Grand Prix, I think they can only get 17,000 in.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not bad numbers, really.
It's decent enough numbers. It's just like you're swamped by the fact that there's 90,000 seats or whatever, I suppose.
Yes, it just looks like you can, buddy. Yeah. You got the room everywhere to just do whatever you like. You can play a game of football there in the crowd.
Yeah, it's kind of similar with Cardiff, but to maybe a sort of a lesser extent. But at least it doesn't with Cardiff. The empty seats at the front are covered over to for safety reasons, and then the empty seats at the back you tend to not see on the TV. So it sort of looks it looks full, but even though there's probably there's a good amount of seats not taken. Yeah,
well, I'm pretty sure the same company built them 2 stadiums.
And it was Aussie Rules football ground, isn't it? That was its main purpose. Yeah,
but they play AFL on the MCG, which is the Melbourne Cricket Ground. So that's the same size pitch.
Right.
So it's obviously a massive stadium.
And what about your international aspirations? Because in the winter, you've beaten Jason Doyle, you've beaten Jack Holder, you've beaten Ty Woofenden in these events. These are all Grand Prix riders that you have been out there and beaten in the last few weeks. What about you then on that next step up and the international stage potentially, and Team Australia ambitions maybe?
Yeah, I hear it every year that I ride good in Australia, don't ride good in the UK. It ain't by lack of effort, I can tell you that. But, I've even heard it now. I heard it yesterday. Like, I got a keyboard warrior, I think. Saying that I ride good in Australia but can't put it together in the UK. He's probably right. But, I feel like it's not too far away from clicking, and there has been times that it has clicked. So basically, my goal is to just try and get to number one for Birmingham. Obviously, Nick's got a 10-point average, so that's going to be pretty hard to do. But I feel like that's kind of something I could strive towards, get it up over 9, and then whatever happens, Nick has to be riding really good to maintain that average. And it's not a competition. I want Nick Morris in the team because it's going to make my life a whole lot easier. But, I can help him. And if I get my average up, over 9, well, then that's probably might spur him on a bit more. And I mightn't get there. But if the team and everything goes good, well, then it's not really something to dwell on. I got it high enough and I helped the team become successful. And Nick was done his job, what he was signed to do. So, yeah, that's kind of that goal. The Leicester deal is, like, make the playoffs, establish myself properly, and so the phone rings again for the following season, and yeah, I want to do good for Leicester. I really do. I think it's a track that will help me a little bit better. Obviously, Sheffield's big and round and easy to ride, and there's not so much technicality side to it. And I think I ride a little bit better when it's a little bit more tricky. And that's probably I'm a pretty decent gator, so that helps. And yeah, one thing I do find, if you ride the tricky tracks well, the easier tracks are even easier. So you kind of take that confidence if you're banging in big points at your home track that's quite technical, you take that away.
When it comes to having success in Speedway, you can prepare, you can plan, you can have the best equipment, but there's so much luck involved in the sport as well to give you those good days, those good results, and consequently those good seasons as well. And that's the side of Speedway that you can't control, and in many ways the side of Speedway that people don't really know about, perhaps. Everyone's
got a story. Everyone does. You've got a story, I've got a story. Buddy, the guy next door's got a story. And it's very easy to criticise, but they actually don't know what's going on, really, do they?
No.
Like I've had work visa problems. I've missed 2 actual seasons of Speedway in the UK before COVID, and then I've had COVID.
Yeah.
So it feels like once you kind of get the ball rolling, it's not kind of going to keep rolling. So hopefully the ball just keeps rolling now, to the day, I'm 31 on Friday. So I'd definitely like to do it for another 5-10 years, maybe, get to, like the 38 mark. No, like Josh Pickering the other night at Mildura, he was winning his first race, fell off. And that's his fault. Basically, he fell off because he's trying hard. But that's the kind of luck you need. It's that one race or that one season or that, that you beat Ty Wolfenden that night or you beat Bartos Marslik that night, and then people notice you, and then you get doors open and people kind of give you a chance. Pico the other night, from him falling off in his first heat, kind of led to him not winning the meeting because he was fast. But he made a mistake in the first heat, and that's just how Speedway is. It's so temperamental. You do not know where you sit every time, and the moment you kind of lay up on it and you go, "Oh, I'll be right," something changes. So you got to stay on top of it. And I don't know how people that are so kind of laid back and lazy, get away with it, and it doesn't last forever. You do have to stay on top of it.
Yeah, no, well, that's it. You know, your luck runs out quicker, I think, if you do that as well. You know, at least if you put in the hours in and you understand what's going on with your bike and you've done the preparation, then you know that at least is in your hands. What happens sometimes on the track's not.
Yeah, there's a good quote, like being fit. You need to be fit, obviously, and you need to know like what your bike do, and you need to make sure your bike's oiled and lubricated and tuned up. So there's no reason why your body shouldn't be the same. Like, you know, you put so much time into your bike, so you do 4 or 5 hours to prepare it for the next meeting. Well, you probably should really do an hour or an hour and a half on your body as well. You know, whether it's stretching or going for a run or whatever, or eating the right foods, you should kind of make the balance right. And as you get older, you figure that out, Ian. I've figured that out the last couple of years.
And the older you get, your body reacts differently to the food as well.
Yes, it does. It definitely does.
Yeah, defo. Well, it sounds like you're doing all the right things, and it's just looking forward to bringing on the season now for real over here. Yeah,
for sure, mate. I got one more meeting in Mildura. I got the Jason Lyons Trophy. That's on Saturday.
Cool. Okay.
So hopefully try and get a win there. It's not the hardest meeting in the world, but it doesn't matter. Like Jamin's riding in it as well, so he's obviously always hard to beat. But yeah, those little meetings like that build confidence, and that's a nice kind of paid practice, I guess, before I go back. So yeah. The floods might have worked in my favour there by having a couple of meetings just before I go back.
And are these meetings that maybe reorganised from when the floods came then, yeah?
Yeah, they were meant to be... Well, one was meant to be in the middle of November when Adam just got here. And then the other one was meant to be before the Oceania meeting. Right. So that was before the new year.
Yeah.
It's good that they got them on, basically. The water's gone down. The clubs work very hard to make it happen. They bring Ty here. There was a massive crowd here last weekend, and we get another meeting in as well. So it's pretty cool.
Nice stuff. And then when do you head back over here? How does your preparation for British Speedway go? Are you back soon? Or?
Yeah, basically I'm hanging out here for a couple more weeks. Me and my girlfriend, Laura, we go back together on the 1st of March. So, yeah, that's kind of when it's all done and dusted here. Goodbye nice weather, and go tackle that shit weather and the traffic.
It's all waiting for you. It's all waiting for you.
Yeah.
Nice stuff.
And I really like the UK. I really do like the British people. Like, I do like the UK. I just don't like the traffic and the weather.
Well, you might get like 2 or 3 weeks of decent weather if you're lucky.
Not in Glasgow.
Well, I was going to say, you're living in Glasgow, which is not really improving the odds on the traffic or the weather front. You want to live somewhere a bit further south and you might do better.
Yeah. The getting to Glasgow bit, the traffic's fine, but the weather's still shit.
Yeah. Well, I remember we did a BSN meeting in was it Ipswich in the summer when it was like the heat wave, and I got in the car and it was
t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah, well, it was like 30. It was 36 degrees at like 8 o'clock in the morning when I left the hotel there, and then we drove up to Glasgow. So I spent the whole day driving. Get to Glasgow and it's 15 degrees and cloudy. I'm like, got my coat on.
It got rained off that night too, didn't it?
No, I don't think so. It was looking like it might. It had rained.
Yeah.
I think we got away with it, as I remember. But not ideal. But that's just Scottish life.
No, that's just British weather.
One of the big differences between life in Australia and life in the UK. But coming in the final part of Humans of Speedway, we'll chat to Sedgy about his dream Speedway meeting. What would be his favourite track? Who would be in his all-time team? And, well, which rules would he tweak? Well, there's a few things to look forward to in the next part of Humans of Speedway. Welcome back to Humans of Speedway. Don't forget to check out the previous episodes, which are available now. The most recent ones being Dave Rowe, Eurosport commentator and journalist and writer for the Speedway Star, and also one of the many voices trying to save Speedway at Coventry. Also recently spoke with Leon Flint and his dad, Gary Flint. Leon is the captain of the Berwick Bandits and also racing for Wolves in 2023. His dad is the team manager and one of the co-promoters at the Berwick Bandits. So we have a chat about both of their times in Speedway. And before that, Adam Roynan, who will be racing for the Poole Pirates in 2023 in the Championship and in the National League. He'll be representing the Edinburgh Monarchs Academy, talking about his long career in Speedway. So those are just a few of the more recent episodes. I think there's around 40 or so episodes in total. So if you're new to the podcast, there's plenty to go back through. Some highlights that I would point out for you. Gary Havelock's episode is well worth a listen. Jeremy Doncaster. For some reason, people have just rediscovered this. It's weird. I get notifications and people saying, sort of interacting with episodes that are nearly 2 years old now, but which is great. But there's so much stuff in there. Chris Morton, spoke to him. That was a big one. And many, many more besides. So have a look through the back catalogue. There's plenty to keep you going. Right now, Justin Sedgmen is with us, and let's talk about your dream Speedway meeting, Sedgy. I know you're doing a few testimonials and meetings at the start of the season, but if you were designing your own meeting, we've got a few questions for you here. So, first of all, the track you would race on purely for the racing. What is your favourite track?
King's Lynn. Yeah,
why?
I like that place.
What, you can go fast in racing lines or what?
I've just always liked it. I like the banking on it. I like it. It's normally prepared pretty good. And you can ride the bike in hard, and it looks kind of a bit daunting in that, but it's actually not. And it's just like, if it's right, it's like riding on rails.
Mm.
So, yeah, and I've always found that there's good racing there too. Actually say it quite often that Kings Lynn's my favourite track I like riding on.
Cracking. Okay, then. If we're going to put the Kings Lynn track in a stadium, different surroundings, where would you move the Kings Lynn track to if you could?
Yeah, I'd just technically, mate, you could nearly do it at Mildura because it's very similar. It's got banking, it's got straights, and it's got corners. So you could probably just make the Mildura track a little bit bigger and use that material that they use at Kings Lynn, and that's it. Bang it in Mildura, right next to the river. So we've got to worry about floods.
Yeah. So we're just moving the shale effectively from Kings Lynn to Mildura.
Pretty much, because even the air fence is the same.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's a different one. So yeah, okay, just the actual that physically move the shale to Mildura, and then we're good. Okay, so that's the venue. All right. So if you were going to pick like a dream team, right, 7 riders, who'd be on your team sheet? Ricardson,
Lions. I was never going to say this, but I've actually had a lot to do with him the last few weeks, and I'd have to say Woofenden.
Okay.
Steve Johnson, Jason Crum. Put Sam at 6 and Lee Lanham at 7.
Cool. Okay. Sounds like a good lineup. Talk us through those then.
Yeah. Tony Ricardson obviously is my hero. Jason Lyons I've had a lot to do with him. Woofy, I think the way he is with people and kids and what he's done the last couple of weeks in Australia has been absolutely amazing. To be honest, I wasn't that keen on the guy. I always thought he was a little bit of attention seeking in that, but it's actually not. It's him. That's who he is. That's what he does. Like, he's so cool. Like, he even auctioned his trophy that he won at the Field Crump Classic in the bar, in the club rooms that we saved with the levy banks after the meeting. And I said just before it, actually, I said, if anyone's in here, because there's a lot of people there, I said, does anyone can help Dale Wood, who's moved from Wagga Wagga to Mildura to become a better speed rider, and now going over to Edinburgh to ride for the Devils in the National League. If anyone can help him, anything's appreciated, whether it's $50 or $500. Next thing, I was second that night, so the next speech was Wolfie. And he did his speech and he said, well, I'm auctioning off my trophy. And he said it starts at $500. And then it got up to $1,500, got sold. And he didn't even break stride. He just said, make sure you get Dale Wood's account details, and all the money's gone to Dale so he can get kick-started in his British career.
Oh, wow, that's nice, isn't it?
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And that started a chain reaction. Then everyone was going up to Dale, giving him $100. A couple of people giving $500, and I think he walked away with like $3,000 after that. Wow, nice evening's work, but a big boost for him moving now everything to start his career at Edinburgh. Yeah, so that's why Ty Wolfenden is in my team, because I think you need the guy in there. And then Steve Johnson, known him a long time. He was my first captain at Somerset. Kind of pointed me in the right direction. Jason Crump, no reason. No, there's a load of reasons, but he's a good friend of mine, and he's 3 times world champion, which helps. So Sam's the same thing. Good friend, legend, just always like riding with him. And then Lee Lanham, I've always just kind of admired the guy. Always a very nice bloke, him and his brother. And, yeah, he's kind of someone I've wanted to be like as a human, if that makes sense, because he's such a nice bloke. And where did you must have ridden with him somewhere along the line then, I'm guessing? Newport. Newport, yeah. The Wasps, and they were a good little club, weren't they? And had a lot of good riders through the course of their history there, and another club we're sadly missing now. No, I was actually teammates with Jason Doyle. Oh, wow, okay. So there's me, Doyley, and Lee Lanham, Charlie Jetta. Yeah, there's a few of us there. Not a bad little team in itself. Great lineup then. Rickardson, Lyons, Wolfenden, Jono, Jason Crump, Sam Masters, Lee Lanham. If you were going to pick a referee then for your Dream Speedway event, which referee would you go for? Craig. Yeah, Craig. So Craig Ackroyd, and we spoke about Craig before, but tell us about racing in his meetings. Craig's a good referee because he always makes the riders feel the most important, if that makes sense. He referees a meeting where the attention's not on the referee. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure he's made mistakes, but whenever I've rode in his meeting, you kind of just do the meeting and go home, and you don't even know that you don't even know who the referee was. And I reckon that's the best referee to get if you actually don't know who's refereeing, because you're not worried about the referee. Just always like the guy, really. Like I said, he makes the meeting about the meeting and not about the referee. And he is really the top referee at the moment in British Speedway. He's the FIM referee. He's one of the only British referees that you'll find at a Speedway Grand Prix, along with Christina Turnbull, I believe. So safe pair of hands, absolutely. And I'd like to get Craig on one time, because I know he's busy through the course of the winter. I think I'm right in saying he's going to be refereeing some ice speedway very soon. So, the life of a referee is a fascinating one, particularly doing the stuff that Craig's doing. Let's talk about rules. If you're going to adjust or introduce a rule or whatever, or enforce a rule for your meeting, what would that be if you're going to have access to the rule book? I'd like to see if people in Speedway do something wrong, like drug substances, and, we all have licenses. We all have to obey by the rules. And I find that people get away with things in Speedway too easily. And I don't like that, because everyone's got the same rule book. Everyone signs the same agreement. And if you're taking drugs, you should be out, basically. And not only that, if you get like a couple of warnings next to your name because you've been in a fight or just being a dick on Twitter, or, abusing the pitch steward that's a volunteer, you should be reprimanded for that stuff, because there's a code of conduct you need to abide by, and I've always tried to do that. And I've always tried to be as polite as I can we've also concentrated on what I need to do, and that's race by my bike as good as I can. And there's sometimes things do frustrate you, but at the end of the day, the scrutineer and the guy that opens the gate and the guy that's the announcer or the guy that does the kids club book, or the lady that does the kids club book for the young kids that come and watch, or you got to treat them all with respect. You don't have to even do that. You just need to be kind. I don't know how to say it. You just need just not be a dick, really.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
And I do find that some riders are getting away with things too easily, and they shouldn't be, and they shouldn't be in the sport, because there's someone else, and there's even young British kids that have been left on the sidelines this year haven't got positions because there's some riders that, they're cocks, really. They shouldn't be. They shouldn't have a spot. It's wrong. It is wrong, and we should be doing more drug tests as well.
It's it's a fair point you make, especially in a point where we've got some riders, as you say, who are left out, riders that have obeyed the rules. And as you say, in some cases there are riders that perhaps have broken the rules who are getting those team spots. So maybe that's one way to allow a space for those other riders that are currently missing out to get in. The
people that are writing the rules aren't going into the first corner with them. Put my steel shoe on and see how you feel wanting to go in with someone. It's wrong. That really does annoy me.
One final question then for you. If you were going to have an opposition for your team, your 1 to 7 that you already listed, and this would be like an actual team that did exist at some point, a great team, which team would you have?
I think you would have to go back to one of the teams like in the Ivan Major days, like one of the Bellevue teams with PC and Ivan and that.
Yeah, like in the 70s.
Yeah, just totally change it around, because you kind of can't really compare now, but you'd like to see something. I'd like to see something in the past, one of them teams. I think my team's probably too good, but, if you compare, because obviously they had a superstar in each team back then.
Yeah.
They didn't have 2 superstars or 3 superstars.
Sounds good, though. If only we could make it happen, but I'm sure it will be a thriller, and we'll have to have the debate about whether they're going to be using laydowns or uprights another time. Thanks for joining us, Sedgy. It's been great chatting with you, as always, and all the best for when you make it over here. Obviously, you got your meeting at Mildura at the weekend, but when you get back over here with Birmingham and with Leicester, and might see you on BSN sometime as well, because it was great having you in the commentary box a few times.
Yeah, I didn't mind the BSN gig. That was pretty good. Definitely for sure. Looking forward to the season. It's not too far away, which is good. I'm just about kind of going to work in Australia, to be honest. I've got 2 more days to go, and that's it. My sponsor said, you better get ready. So, he's looking forward to getting back to the UK and seeing everyone and having a good year. And, hopefully it is a good year for British Speedway and everyone can support it.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping. Everything looks good. A few interesting changes as well to freshen things up. I think let's hope we're in for a big year of British Speedway. Thanks again, Sedgy, for spending the time, your evening, but my morning, and it's great to catch up across the world.
Yeah, it's actually Valentine's Day while we're doing this, and my missus is going to be absolutely fuming with me now.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, it is Valentine's Day. You're right. Well, it's been wonderful spending Valentine's night with you, Sedgy.
She's stoked on it as well. You're my Valentine, Ian.
Well, it's been. I can't think of a better way to spend the night.
Talk about Speedway.
That's it. Great stuff. Cheers, then, mate. All right, I'll catch you soon.
See you, mate.
And on that unexpected romantic bombshell, my thanks to Justin Sedgmen for joining us in this episode of Humans of Speedway. Sedgy will be heading back to the UK very soon, as you heard, racing for the Birmingham Brummies and the Leicester Lions. We do have a fair few people listen to this podcast in Australia. So if you can make it down to Mildura, Saturday night at the time of recording this, so coming up, it will be the 18th of February. He's in action in the Phil Crump meeting, which is taking place at Mildura on Saturday, and a great evening of entertainment to be expected there for our Australian listeners, which is always great to have you along. You'll also be able to catch Justin Sedgmen racing in a couple of the pre-season meetings, including the Stuart Robson farewell meeting, which happens at Redcar on the 19th of March, and on the 26th of March it is the Sam Masters testimonial. Is racing in that as well, so look out for those fixtures and get down to them if you can. Don't forget to check out some of the previous episodes. Dave Rowe, the previous one before this, a great listen. Dave is a commentator with Eurosport, but also a writer for the Speedway Star magazine. He's in charge of the press office for British Speedway. There's very few people sees more Speedway than Dave in a season. Absolute encyclopedic knowledge, but also involved with the fight to save Coventry Speedway as well. So take that one in. Also recently spoke with Leon Flint and Gary Flint for the Berwick Bandits. Leon's the under-21 British champion. His dad is the team manager at Berwick. And then before that, we had Adam Roynan. Those are the 3 previous episodes in this particular little block of series that we've done. But prior to that, there's loads more to go through. Just listen to them at your leisure. They're all reasonably timeless. So catch up if you're a new listener. Thanks again for joining us. We're back with more episodes very soon of Humans of Speedway.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of statistics, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and an enormous selection of players and stat options are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million football fans who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.